One of my favorite things to do when I was younger was build stuff. I used to love to play with building blocks, but I used to try my best to build really tall towers. And one of my favorite ways to do that was kind of weird. It was with cups and it was with plates, right? You maybe don't build towers like this often, but it's really simple. You see, you put one cup down and then you put a plate down. And then you put another cup down and you put another plate down. And you put another cup down, another plate down, until you can get a really tall tower. It's a really simple game, especially when you're playing with someone else, as fast as you can to build the highest tower. See, the trick is that if you're going to build a really tall tower, you have to sometimes reach on your tiptoes, right? Sometimes when it gets really tall, it gets really challenging because you're really trying to concentrate. Sometimes you get too distracted, like I am right now. You can see it wobbling. And sometimes when you get too distracted, it's a recipe for disaster. Sometimes if you get too distracted, maybe you knock it down or you're careless. The worst, though, is when you're building a tower around some friends and someone thinks it's going to be funny to come and knock it over. Man, there's nothing worse when someone comes in and knocks your tower over. All of that hard work was gone. Everything seemed like it was lost or destroyed. And you know, it was a little bit like that in our big God story. You see, Israel had stopped following God, and they thought that they knew better. And they felt like they knew better than even God. And this made God's people weak. In fact, they were so weak that when the enemy came, the Babylonians, they came after them, God allowed Israel to be defeated. The king of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar, took many of Israel's children hostage, and he took them back with him to Babylon. Several years later, the Israelites in Jerusalem, they got frustrated and they rebelled again. They fought against the Babylonians, but they lost, and they were defeated by them once again. This time, the Babylonians, they took even more slaves with them to Babylon. A few years later, the Babylonians came again, and this time they destroyed the city of Jerusalem. They ruined the walls and the temple, and they turned it into rubble and ruins. And they did all that because the Israelites kept rebelling. For 70 years, the Jewish people lived in captivity. Their beloved city was destroyed, the temple was in ruins, and they could no longer offer sacrifices to God. Everything seemed hopeless. But God is able to restore even the most difficult circumstances. You see, God promised to bring his people home. And after many years, God began to fulfill his promise to restore Jerusalem and return his people back to their home. It took some time, but God began to use people like Ezra and then Nehemiah to bring people to their home and to rebuild the temple and then rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Eventually, Jerusalem was fully restored by God, and the people returned to live and worship there. God's plan of restoration was not only for Israel. He can restore the broken pieces of your life too. You may look at your life and see pieces scattered and broken. You may feel like ruins and rubble are all you see. But God is really good at rebuilding and restoring things. God restores.